7 gods, 7 cities, 7 races. For uncounted years the elders ruled their created races in perfect harmony. Then, 100 years later, death, ruin, and the elders gone from the world. Before I tell you of their fall, you must understand what was lost. Let me paint you a picture of paradise. The 7 cities were, and still are, the most remarkable feats of architecture imaginable. Meriath with his Atlerids in Seraphim, and Theron with his humans in Lorendel, Silvaris with Phaetons in Golden Gate, Luminar with Ameni in Amethius, Korlath with Trollids in Turania, Mortarion with Ragans in Aurelium, and Tribaris with the Layfold in Hillscape. In those days, the dreams of the elders shaped reality itself, and the boundaries between thought and creation were as thin as morning mist. Children were born, but never grew old. They learned to walk alongside great-great-grandparents who remained as vital as the day they first drew breath. In the gardens of Seraphim, Atlerid philosophers would contemplate a single flower's growth, watching each petal unfold with the patience of the immortals they were. The Phaetons of Golden Gate wove tapestries that took generations to complete, each thread placed with the perfection that only endless time could permit. Time itself flowed differently then. Without the press of mortality, a project might span what we would now call centuries. The great works were never rushed, never compromised. In Turania, the Trollids carved entire mountains into sculptures so intricate that even today our finest artisans can only marvel at their complexity. The Ameni of Amethius composed symphonies that lasted for decades, their harmonies building and evolving like living things. Knowledge grew like the eternal gardens, ever blooming, never withering. The elders shared their wisdom freely, teaching their created races the mysteries of the cosmos at a pace that matched each individual's understanding. In Aurelium, the Ragans built vast libraries where every book was a masterwork, each word carefully chosen over years of focus and thought. The Layfolds of Hillscape created works of art that captured emotions we no longer have words to describe. Communities were bound not by necessity but by choice and love. Families grew like branching trees, spreading over outward but never breaking. In the markets of Lorendel, humans shared their creations freely, taking pride in the joy their work brought to others rather than seeking profit or advantage. Children played in the streets paved with stones that sparkled with their own inner light, their laughter echoing through days that knew no end. The very air hung sweet with possibility. Rivers ran clear, their waters blessed by the elders' presence. The animals knew no fear, and predator lay down with prey, their instincts of killing not yet created, as the paradise surrounding them gave them all they needed. Even the smallest pebble held beauty beyond our modern imagination. For everything was crafted with the loving attention that only immortality could afford. Yet within this perfection lay the seeds of its own end. For how can one genuinely understand joy who has never known sorrow? How can one appreciate peace who has never witnessed conflict? Perhaps this is why, when the first shadow of pride crept into an Atlerid's heart, none recognized it for what it was. How could they? They had no word for hatred, no concept of envy, no understanding of the darkness that would soon shatter their eternal spring. The first murder was not simply a death. It was the death of paradise itself. It introduced concepts for which the elder tongue had no words. Loss, grief, fear. Like a stone cast into still waters, it sent ripples through the fabric of reality itself. The elders' perfect creation began to crack, and all the shadows we know today crept through those cracks. They say the world held its breath the day paradise died. In the great city of Seraphim, Meriath stood before his assembled Atlerids, his form blazing with cosmic energy that made reality itself bend around him. His voice, they say, shook the very foundations of the earth as he declared,
"No longer shall we bow to the pretense of equality. We were first, we are greatest, and we shall rule.
In response, the Athlarids raised their voices in a thunderous cry. Across the world in Irelium, Mortarion gathered his Raegans with a heavier heart. The murdered body of a single Raegan still lay in state, the first death that had ever known. When he spoke, his words carried not pride, but sorrow and determination.
They have brought death to our paradise. If they will not make amends, they must face justice.
The Raegans stood in silent formation, their eyes bright with an emotion their language had no word for yet. Vengeance. The two elders had already battled alone for 40 days and 40 nights. Those who witnessed it would later struggle to describe what they saw. Reality buckled and warped around them as cosmic energy surged. Mountains rose and crumbled like waves on the sea. The sky burned with aurora that spelled out the names of powers too vast for mortal minds to comprehend. Watching their duel, many began to understand for the first time that even the elders themselves had limits. When neither could overcome the other, they turned to their created races, not as children to nurture, but as weapons to wield. The arming of the armies transformed the cities. In Seraphim, Meriath shaped weapons and armor with cosmic energy, each piece a masterwork that sang with power. The Athlarids trained in perfect formation, their movements synchronized by their absolute faith in their creator's superiority. Their armor gleamed with an inner light pulsing like heartbeats, and their weapons hummed songs that made the air shiver. In Irelium, Mortarion took a different approach. The Raegans developed fluid battle formations that could adapt to any situation. Their weapons were more straightforward, but no less deadly, designed for efficiency rather than show. They moved like water, each unit flowing into the positions that would best support the others. Their training focused on cooperation and mutual support, embodying the very principles of equality they fought to defend. The first battle was a horror none were prepared for. When the armies met on a plain that had never known violence, many warriors on both sides found themselves unable to comprehend what they were meant to do. The concepts of combat and killing were so foreign that the initial clash was marked more by confusion than fury. Some dropped their weapons and ran. Others, driven by new emotions they didn't understand, fought with a desperate savagery that shocked even their commanders. The plain, which had been covered in eternal flowers that morning, was churned to mud by nightfall. The first blood ever shed in battle soaked into a soil that had never known death before. Warriors on both sides discovered pain, fear, and loss. Concepts so alien that many went mad trying to process them. The sounds of combat, steel on steel, screams of pain, the thunder of charging formations were all new to a world that had only known peace. For 13 years the war continued in this way. Neither side could gain a decisive advantage. The Athlarids had superior individual warriors, their firstborn status granting them natural advantages. But the Raegans fought with desperate innovation, developing new tactics and strategies with each engagement. The world began to change around them as battles scarred the landscape. Valleys were carved by desperate retreats, mountains raised as barricades, forests burned as armies tried to deny their armies cover. It was then that Korlath made the decision that would change the course of the war. The elder of the Trollids had been watching the conflict with growing interest. Some chronicles say he had fallen deeply in love with Meriath, enchanted by the Athlarid elder's fierce pride and overwhelming power. Others suggest darker bargains were struck in secret meetings between the two. The truth is lost to time, but the consequences were clear. In the 13th year of the war, Korlath led the armies of Turania to join Meriath's cause. The Trollids brought a new dimension to the war. Where the Athlarids fought with precision and the Raegans with fluidity, the Trollids fought with overwhelming force. Their massive armies crashed into Raegan formations like tidal waves, their sheer numbers threatening to overwhelm Mortarion's carefully planned defenses. The combination of Athlarid skill and Trollid might forced the Raegans into retreat for the first time in the war. Mortarion, seeing his forces pushed to their limit, made a desperate journey to the neutral territories where the elders watched with growing concern. His words to them would echo through history.
Today they come for me and mine, tomorrow it will be you and yours. Meriath's ambition knows no bounds. He will not stop until all kneel before him or are destroyed.
The truth of his words struck home, and Theron was the first to pledge his support, leading the humans of Lorindel into battle. The humans proved to be fearsome additions to the Alliance, their adaptability allowing them to fill whatever role was needed in battle. They could fight in tight formations like the Attlerids or fluid units like the Reagans, their versatility making them invaluable. Luminar followed, bringing the Ameni into the conflict. The Ameni's tactical genius strengthened the Alliance considerably, as did their ability to analyze and counter enemy strategies, turning many battles. Then Trebaris pledged his forces, bringing the Layfolds' unique talents to the Alliance using their stealth and subterfuge to cause chaos for the Attlerids. Only Silvaris held back, choosing to keep his Phaetons neutral as he watched the conflict unfold. Despite the overwhelming odds, Meriath and Korlath's forces pressed on. Their advance slowed, but not stopped. Then came the betrayal that shook the Alliance to its core. In the 37th year of the war, Trebaris, who had appeared to favor the defending elders, suddenly turned his coat. Whether through persuasion or darker bargains, Trebaris led his Layfolds to join Meriath's forces, their unique abilities adding another dimension to his already formidable armies. The war's balance shifted again, with 3 elders and their forces on either side. The battle waged on, both sides evenly matched, until Silvaris finally broke his neutrality in the 51st year. When the Layfolds launched an ill-planned attack on Phaeton territory, Silvaris could no longer stand aside. He joined Antheron, Mortarion and Luminar, bringing the full might of the Phaetons into the war. Once again, the defending elders seemed to have the upper hand. Then, Meriath, Korlath and Trebaris made a discovery that would reshape the very nature of power in our world. Unable to grant their armies cosmic energy without risking the destruction of reality itself, they instead created something new: natural energy. This power, drawn from the world itself rather than the cosmic fabric of reality, could be wielded by their mortal armies. Armed with these new powers, the Attlerids, Trollids and Layfold became even more fearsome. The defending elders were forced to respond in kind, granting natural energy to their forces. The world groaned under the weight of these new powers being unleashed. Battles now raged not just with steel and muscle, but with elemental forces. Warriors called lightning from clear skies, raised walls of stone with a gesture, or wrapped themselves in shields of pure energy. But it was what came next that truly damned our world. In the 68th year of the war, Meriath, Korlath and Trebaris committed an act that would echo through the ages. They created the first demons. Born from corrupted cosmic energy, these beings were weapons unlike anything seen before. Their very presence warped reality, their powers a dark reflection of their creator's might. The demons turned to the tide of battle wherever they appeared, their unnatural abilities overwhelming even the most skilled warriors. The defending elders, pushed to the brink of defeat, responded with an equally momentous creation. In the 82nd year of the war, they created angels, beings of pure cosmic energy, explicitly designed to combat the demon threat. The battles between angels and demons would become legend, their clashes reshaping entire landscapes. The war's momentum shifted again. In the 92nd year, angels broke through Trebaris' defenses, allowing Antheron and Luminar to reach the Elder himself. The battle was brief but cataclysmic, ending with Trebaris' death, the first Elder to fall. The Layfolds, their creator destroyed, were soundly defeated and withdrew from the war. 4 years later, the combined might of Antheron, Silvaris and Mortarion brought down Korlath. In their anger at his betrayal, they cast a terrible curse upon the Trollids, dooming them to suffer an exorbitant number of stillbirths, limiting their growth as a race forever after. The Trollids, like the Layfolds before them, retreated from the conflict. Now, only Meriath remained among the rebel elders, but he was far from being defeated. With his Attlerids and his demons, he fought on with increasing desperation. The final battle came in the 99th year of the war. Mortarion, facing his old enemy one last time, sacrificed himself to weaken Meriath enough for the others to act, and Theron, Sylvaris, and Luminar seized their chance, combining their power to banish Meriath and all his demons to another dimension. Even in defeat, Meriath's power was staggering. As the banishment took hold, he enacted one final act of defiance. The entire city of Seraphim began to sink into the ocean. The surviving elders, and Theron, Sylvaris, and Luminar, looked upon what their war had wrought. Paradise was shattered beyond repair. Death, unknown before the war, was now woven into the very fabric of existence. Natural energy had changed the fundamental laws of their created world. Demons and angels had introduced the supernatural powers that could never be fully controlled. The races they had created and loved had learned hatred, fear, and warfare. Their final act was to seal the dimensional barriers, setting the angels as eternal guardians to prevent the demons' return. Then, in their wisdom or their shame, they chose to depart. They cast a spell ensuring no elder could ever return to the world, then withdrew to another dimension, leaving their created races to forge their own destiny. The War of Elders had lasted 99 years. It began with the first death and ended with death woven into the very nature of existence. Paradise was lost, but something new was born. From its ashes, a world where mortals would determine their own fate, for good or for ill.